Nervous system regulation is huge. Nervous system regulation techniques are similar to tantric techniques. Nervous system regulation techniques like the Shiva shake are ancient tantric techniques. Even somatic practices, somatic works with your body, your nervous system to heal trauma and your fascia. How even yoga positions and other tantra practices and breath work help us to regulate our nervous systems, help us heal from trauma and thrive in our modern world, even though this wisdom is from over 5,000 years ago. One of the things that blew my mind was the fact that the three things that support healing trauma are breath, sound, and movement. I've shared before, the three tenets of Tantra are also breath, sound, and movement for over 5,000 years. Whoa. The thing that is the foundations for Tantra are the very things that are used modern day to help heal trauma. And it made a lot of sense to me as well, because I'm from an older generation where I really would shy away from receiving therapy. I was like, I don't want anyone to tell me I'm crazy. I don't want to know that I trust therapy. I don't want to admit to my challenges. Tantra, because there's the pleasure aspect of it, the sensuality, Sting saying how he's having lovemaking for hours on end. I'm just like, oh, I'm curious about Tantra. Plus, I'm a Scorpio. So I was like, I want to know about that. And I guess you would say like my gateway drug that got me into being more open to these other ways of healing and these other modalities. That's how I started beginning to heal a lot of my childhood trauma and wounds, was through Tantra practices and everything. And I'm forever grateful. It's shifted my life in the most beautiful ways. And my relationships are thriving. I grew up from a childhood of a lot of chaos. Sometimes I would choose adult relationships or partners, and just the chaos would continue. I'm thankful that I've been able to use these practices, attract better partners and healthier relationships, and have better relationships with my daughters as they're adults. Because when I first knew Tantra and discovered that, my kids were already adults. And so I didn't have tools to be more chill and more resourced in my emotional intelligence and have healthy ways of communicating and ways of slowing down my nervous system when I was under stress, so that I didn't spew out my frustration or my stressors on my children and just create more chaos within the home. If we've had past childhood traumas, we can think, I don't want to do that to my children. For example, I'll share real quick. My mother was an alcoholic. Her mother was an alcoholic as well. They had a father, alcoholic. So for many generations, there's been alcoholism. So I just don't drink. So I was just like, I want to stop that within my family dynamics. And I was super proud that I stopped that. I was like, oh, my kids are winning because they didn't have to deal with an alcoholic. I did not realize till later that my behavior was very much like a dry drunk. I could get angry very fast and really easy and yell on the littlest things sometimes. And I would behave because that's how I saw my mom being drunk. I would see her respond to challenges or react instead of responding. And so even though I didn't have a drink in my hand, I still had learned those behaviors by being in that environment. And I was like, damn, I really thought I helped my kids so much. And yes, it was better than what I experienced, but they still had their own traumas being with me because I hadn't healed those wounds and I hadn't gone to therapy or Al-Anon or whatever. And I was in denial. I was like, oh, I'm a nurse. I'm saving lives. I'm all good. I don't need to worry about that. Years later, I've had some deep healing conversations too in the past year, even with my daughter, and we continue to heal deeper. And they feel safer to communicate challenges with me. We can have a lot of guilt as a parent, the mother guilt, the father guilt. So when they want to share their challenges growing up with me, I could get offended easy. Now, instead of being reactive to things, I'm able to respond and pause and take a deep breath, regulate my nervous system, and be a safe space for my children or friends to share the things on their heart they need to share. In the past, it wasn't like that. I was super reactive. Our ability to respond to challenges is our responsibility. And one of the things that helped me make a shift in this area of my life was people's behavior is a reflection on them. My response to their behavior is a reflection on me. In the past, if someone was having bad behavior, I would just come out with my bad behavior and pointing my finger at people and telling them, you shouldn't do this. And not my finest moments. Sometimes I felt really right in doing that because I really hate to see people being taken advantage of. But there's a better way to communicate, because people are not going to be able to listen to you. You're going to dysregulate their nervous systems, and we just escalate an already challenging situation instead of finding a resolution, and being able to calm our nervous system. One of the things that we don't realize when we're dating people and we're in relationships, we're thinking like, oh, I'm attracted to blondes. Oh, I'm a leg man. Astrologically, we're compatible. I tend to date or attract this type of person. Or, oh, we have the same interests, like all of these things. Or they're a great lover. We have the same love languages. All those can be true. That's who I'm in a relationship with. Tall, dark, handsome, whatever it is. I love their sense of humor. They made me feel really safe. They're a great provider, whatever it is. But what we don't realize is that we're actually in relationship with one another's nervous systems. Over 95% of adults received inadequate parenting. So many of those adults don't go and get therapy. So we will numb and disconnect and disassociate from the pain from the childhood wounds and traumas. We often have a mother wound and a mother or father wound as well. And if we're not addressing those challenges, we can numb out from that by either through sexual behaviors, being promiscuous, that was me, or drinking alcohol or using drugs. So we're disassociating or disconnecting from that pain, or we're turning to religion. So we're getting some solace or comfort, and then we can feel like we can be healed from that. We're just seeking something to help us in those ways that we've been hurt as children. Often we can't share with our partners what those traumas are because we may be embarrassed or we don't want to be judged. Or our partner might be judgmental when we do try to share and they don't give us sympathy. And I know that with my ex, I had shared some of the challenges I had with my mom. And then when I would raise my daughter with them, they would be like, oh, you don't even know because you didn't even have a good mom. It's just, that's a not very nice thing to say to your partner, but whatever. All of us experience some flavor of this at some times. I'll know I'm not alone in this, but I'm just being transparent and sharing. What ends up happening though, if we're in relationship with our partner's nervous systems and we haven't communicated to our partner where our wounds are, our traumas from the past, they're not going to know when they're accidentally bumping up against and touching one of our wounds. If we were to see one another with a gaping wound on their body, we would be more mindful and be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to touch that or pick at that. That obviously hurt. But a lot of times with either emotional abuse, mental abuse, these wounds that we can hold that are hurtful, or maybe even there was some physical wounds that you had that look outwardly that they've healed, but you're still holding a lot of trauma in your body from that. And there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score that talks about how we store trauma in our bodies. But if we don't communicate what our wounds are, then our partners don't know when they're accidentally touching those wounds. And then sometimes we are so disconnected from that wound or that experience that we have that what we're doing then is reacting or we're lashing out at that person because it hurts us, but we're not even really aware that it's not even that person doing something in real time right there that we're upset about. It goes back deeper from something else that they're activating or triggering within us. But if we can't talk to our partners and say, hey, you know what? For me, I didn't realize till recently, like I have an abandonment wound from my father. My rational mind tried to act like I disowned my father, but honestly, he got married when I was young. He used to be closer to me than my mom. And then when he married, they left the country and he like disappeared for 8 years. And I didn't see him from ages like 8 to 15. When he came back and I was a real rebellious teenager to him, my logical mind was trying to say, I disowned my dad and I know he regrets that. And I was punishing him. I could not comprehend because our mind is trying to protect us. Sometimes we will not remember a trauma. We won't remember something that happened when we were younger because it's our body is trying to protect us because maybe that trauma is going to overwhelm our nervous systems in our bodies and it's going to shut us down. So it keeps it to where we forget it and repress it. And you might think, why would I forget that? Sometimes we can have gaps where we don't remember certain years or times in our childhood because something traumatic happened and we're not quite ready to process it. But when we start to get more tools and we can process and we're healing, then our body will say later, oh, I think they're equipped to handle this now. And then it can pop up. That's why that will happen. So now what popped up for me was like, oh, wow, like I have an abandoned wound for my father because he disappeared all those years. I know he had regret about it, but how did it impact my current relationships? me not even aware that I had an abandonment wound. And if you look at the book on attachment styles and have different attachment styles, what would happen then is if I had a partner that wasn't really good at communicating with me, or they would just go off and disappear for a bit, I would just be really worried that like I was being abandoned, or then my people pleaser would come up. And I recently saw something that people pleasers are created from being a parent pleaser. Small children, they're always trying to please their parents so they can be safe or get the love or need or have their needs met, are going to be people pleasers and really tune into their surroundings for safety or to get their needs met and be cared for and not be dismissed. So parent pleasers turn into people pleasers. So then when I'm dating, I'm a big people pleaser. And I'm doing too much for the person I'm dating. Hello, why do you think I got to be good in bed? People pleaser. Within that, I would be really tuned into my lover and be the great girlfriend and always anticipating their needs, just like from the parent pleasing to being the pleaser of my lover. And also sometimes doing too much for them, honestly, because I didn't realize this till I went through this program last year and I had this big moment, this aha moment. And here I'm just turned 55. Okay. So this stuff can take time to unpack and really sit with. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was doing these things with these men sometimes that I would date because deep down I had the abandonment wound from my dad. And I would think, I don't want someone else to pull them away from me or them to choose someone else or to end the relationship with me, because the abandoned little girl inside of me was hurting. So the best way now, if I choose, I've taken a time to just date myself very intentionally this past year, about a year and a half now. One of the things now is that I will communicate with a lover and say, when I'm starting to date again, and I've even talked to some of my exes about it, like, I learned this about me and now we can see why this popped up in the relationship. I've been really transparent about it. If we have a heated discussion and it gets overwhelming, again, nervous system. We're in relationship with our partner's nervous system. Something gets a little heated, one of us is upset, the nervous system starts to dysregulate. It's really good, even in that moment, to pause and take a deep breath, a deep belly breath, and stretch your diaphragm out. Just start to slow down your nervous system. When we have a nervous system, we have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. The way I remember this from nursing school was sympathetic, S, is for speeding it up. Parasympathetic is like a parachute, slowing it down. That's how I remember that. Our nervous system could get amped up when we're having conflict, or even if our partner isn't intending to hurt our feelings, but says something and we're feeling either judged or criticized, like we were with our parents, like whatever it was, that can be a trigger for us. So then this person's nervous system gets amped up. And if in that moment in real time, we don't know how to take some slow, deep breaths and pause for a moment, then we can get even more dysregulated. Then what happens is our relationships, we're just mirroring one another. So then our partner, they start to get dysregulated because they can feel that we're getting stressed out. And then there's just things that starts to become chaos. It just escalates. And how many times have we had an argument with someone, and when you look back, you're like, I cannot believe we got in this intense of an argument over this little thing. But it's these things that are not being said and communicated. And it's that we don't know we're in relationship with our partner's nervous system. Like, why are we not given these skills when we're younger? Yesterday, I went to the grocery store and the woman was really nervous. She says during this time of the year, people have been yelling at her a lot. There was a problem within the checkout in the computers. She thanked me for being polite to her, not being mean. I said to her, take some slow, deep belly breaths and see how you feel. Even like this, taking a deep breath, sigh, let it out. And she was like, wow, that really feels better. Remember, deep breaths are like love notes to your body. When our nervous system is dysregulated, we go into Frankenstein brain, danger. When we're regulated and take deep breaths and slow down our nervous system into parasympathetic, the Einstein brain turns on, and that's the logical problem-solving brain. So even in that moment when she's trying to figure out the computer stuff, if she can just pause for a moment, take some deep breaths, she can navigate it more easily. And just her knowing that I'm not some irate customer, so we can think if we're just bickering at people, no, you're not making it better. They're not going to be able to help you find a solution if they're dysregulated. Returning to the breath. Why we're not taught these things when we're kids in school, I don't know, but we have the opportunity now to teach these things to the people around us when we're out about in the day, like I did yesterday, to our children, to our grandchildren. So anyway, I digress. whenever we are in a relationship, it's so important that we know how to regulate our nervous system, and that when we're with our partner, we can co-regulate our nervous systems, and that our partner is resourced to regulate their nervous system. But sometimes things can be really hard. So let's say for a moment, I'm dating someone and we're having a disagreement. So and sometimes men, they just get to get fresh air. And I've had to walk out of the house before too sometimes. So instead of just storming out, because remember, if I've shared with my partner, hey, you know what? When I was younger, I had an abandonment one with my dad. So if we're having a conflict, it's really important to me that even if you're upset, you just don't storm out and slam the door and leave and not let me know when you're going to come back. Because that is, I'm going to get freaked out. I'm going to tell you, like, it's going to really do a number on me. And we're going to go to a place we both don't want to visit. Okay. Just knowing that, can you just communicate something with me? And we have an agreement. And so the agreement can be like this, where he just says to me, hey, you know what? I'm really feeling activated right now. And I do want to hear what you have to say. So I just need to go for maybe 30 minutes, an hour, get some fresh air and calm down, and I'll come back. And I love you. When I get back, we'll figure this out together. That can be so much easier than getting mad, slamming doors, and just leaving, especially if that person has had an abandonment, because then it feels every time like you're being abandoned again, because when someone is running away because they're upset with us. Also, I would need to ask my partner, where are the childhood wounds that you've had? And what are the things you've experienced? So I can try to have you have a different way of experiencing that, and you feel supported within that, because we can have a lot of healing from our childhood wounds when we're in relationship, if we know how to be there for one another and help each other, support each other to regulate our nervous system, especially for males, when I help them on regulating their nervous systems. And even if they're not learning Tantra or how to last hours on hours with Tantric lovemaking or having non-ejaculatory orgasms, which I teach my clients how to do. It's great for your vitality, life force energy. My clients, he's in his 60s, he says, my wife has become more interested in me, and she just started approaching me, and they began having better lovemaking than they had in decades. And it was all because his nervous system was relaxed. These tools are super powerful. Blessings, everyone.